Hey, my name is Nathan. If this is your first time here, which it is because this is the first video I've ever made, thank you for taking a chance on a new channel. Today I'm going to talk about my video journey and the cameras that I've used and the tools that I've decided on to keep in my video tool bag, so to speak. What got me here and how it all started and why I've chosen the tools I have. So not in that order. We'll start with the first camera I ever owned. It was a Sony A7. That was in 2020, March of 2020. I'm sure as many of us in production spaces had to do, I had to learn how to do video. That was the first time I had picked up a camera. I was serving in a church, doing audio in a church, and I didn't know how to work a camera. So I spent 2 weeks trying to figure out how to use a camera so that I could help with our pre-recorded announcements, help with, eventually we did pre-recorded worship and a pre-recorded message, so we weren't live streaming because we wanted to increase the quality of what we were giving our congregation on Sunday mornings. So I was learning how to use a camera at the same time as learning how to do a live broadcast and then learning how to video edit. So using the Sony A7, it was recording 1080p video at 24 frames. It was a good tool. It was a great beginner camera for me to learn on. It was affordable, and at that time I didn't know what I needed, so it gave me the opportunity to learn what I liked about a camera and where the ceiling of that tool was. So over the next 6 to 8 months, I used that camera and learned how to use a camera. I then eventually realized what I wanted that the Sony A7 couldn't do was 4K video. I wanted to be able to reframe my video in post. So if I was doing talking head style videos like this, I wanted to be able to punch in and move stuff around. I wanted to be able to see graphics pop up and not lose quality in my video file when I was delivering at 1080p, because the original file was 4K, so it was still a higher quality to begin with, so I wasn't losing anything. With that workflow, that prompted me to buy a Sony A6600, and that was the second camera that I owned. I bought a bunch of lenses for it. I eventually landed on a kit with the Sigma 30mm 1.4 and the Sony 18-105 f4. Those are the two lenses that I used with that camera exclusively for a long time. And then when I reached a point with that kit where I wanted more again, and that was more like after owning that for about 1.5 years, 2 years, where I wanted more, I think what I realized in that 2 years working on other projects, working with other people using different cameras, I realized that I wanted to go back to full frame. So about 16 months ago, I sold my 6600 and I bought the Sony A7IV. This has been a great camera, and I used it for about 12 months. What I liked about it originally was that I could get 10-bit color, so I could get 422, I could get S-Log3, all the stuff that you want in 4K footage, high dynamic range, better low light performance from the sensor, mainly just video features. And the full frame benefit is obviously there too, right? But what I ended up actually using was the standard color profile. So on the 6600, I shot in standard. That's all I did. That's all I needed to do. And what I found on the A7IV was that by adding S-Log3 into my workflow, it just took too much time, and I didn't want to do that turnaround. So I shot in standard, and I still shoot in the standard color profile. The actual benefit I got was manual dials and the size of the body, the flip out screen, so having a little more flexibility on where I was looking. The viewfinder is a nicer viewfinder than the 6600. The low light performance, all those things actually were beneficial, and the thing that I wanted most, the 10-bit color, was not. One thing that I have used though, video related, is the 4K 60. So the 4K 60 in the A7IV isn't full frame, it's actually the APS-C crop, but because I came from an APS-C camera, I really don't find that as an issue. I know there are some people out there who don't like that the 4K 60 crops and wish it was full frame, but coming from the 6600 in particular, where 4K 30 cropped a little bit more in anyway, I don't mind because I get 4K 30 full frame or APS-C, no extra crop, and I get 4K 60 in APS-C. So for me, those are all just extra features that I didn't have before. So I think this was a great upgrade for me. But 4 months ago, because I wasn't using 10-bit color, because I wasn't using 4K 60 as much as maybe I could justify owning an A7IV, I sold the camera. And I went back to an A6600 and I used that camera because I knew I could get the most out of what it offered me. I, for the last 4 months, have kept running into the ceiling of that camera and realizing that I wanted more, and realizing that low light performance was very important. Serving in churches, doing event style photography during worship, during messages, during sermons, where a lot of modern church lighting is low on the congregation and bright on stage. Having the extra dynamic range capabilities of a full frame sensor became a necessity. And so for 4 months, I used the 6600, and just a couple days ago, I bought now my second A7IV. If you're in the market for a camera and maybe you're a beginner, maybe you're upgrading to a full frame camera for the first time, I think the 6600 is a great place to start. And if you're upgrading to a full frame camera for the first time, I think the A7IV is the camera to go to. In particular, because it gives you an equal amount of photo and video features, whereas other cameras are kind of skewed one way or the other. I think this is the perfect hybrid camera for someone who has to do an equal amount of photo and video, and that's me. I take photos every Sunday at church. I do lobby photos, I do worship, do the message, do product photography for anything that is getting released. So if we have new invite cards, we'll take pictures of that kind of stuff. Anything that's in the service for B-roll for video, having slow-mo 60 frames for worship is kind of fun to throw in B-roll during promo stuff for events, having slow-mo for lobby stuff for environment and culture. So when we have video, pre-recorded video stuff that talks about culture and what we do as a church, maybe for like relationships and engagement with each other, we get to show that happening, and it's the B-roll looks nice, and having that option for 60 frames is something that I didn't have with the 6600. You might ask, well, if I'm looking at an A7IV and I want 4K 60 for video, or I want higher resolution, like this is 33 megapixels, whereas the 6600 is 24 megapixels. If I want higher resolution for photo, you might say, well, why am I not just going to buy the 6700? I can get it more affordably, and it has 4K video, 4K 60. It has all the features that you've talked about so far, and a couple more. Actually, it's a bit newer. It's got a couple other video features. Why wouldn't I just get that camera? And the rest of that conversation for me would just be about a full frame sensor and having truly better low light performance and the specific look that full frame offers. When I put a 35mm lens on here on this full frame sensor, it actually looks like a 35mm lens. When I put that same lens on a APS-C camera, it ends up looking like a 52mm lens. So the field of view is narrower on that APS-C camera, and I like not having to do math for one. But I like having the extra versatility that offers, because in post, I can always reframe it. I can always punch in a little bit, move stuff around. Or at the shoot itself, I have the option of running a shallower depth of field. So if I need, if I'm running 200 millimeters on a 70 to 200, I can run that at 2.8 and actually get the full shallowness of that depth of field. If I'm 100 or 80 feet away from someone, I can separate that subject from the background really easily. But on an APS-C body, there's less of that subject separation because the depth of field looks different at that focal length. To get the same framing, you're shooting at about 135 millimeters, and now the compression of the lens looks different. The proportions are different. So having extra flexibility with the full frame sensor is why I would push someone towards the A7IV versus an A6700. But if you are on a budget, I think you'd be happy with either of them. For me, it made my decision pretty clear after going back to an APS-C camera that the full frame sensor is something that I valued a lot, which is why I'm back here 2 days ago with a full frame camera again. Hopefully this gave you some insight into the choice I made, kind of how I landed here at the A7IV, what features I was looking for, and if it helps you at all with that decision, let me know down below in the comments. If you have any questions about the A7IV, I would love to do a couple more videos on it. I have a rig for a 6600. I'm going to get a cage and rig this out, so I'll talk about that and why I've made some choices there. There's a ton of videos out there on that, but I like to get my thoughts down and out loud, down in video form, out loud, so that people can converse. I love to be a resource and want to do that for y'all. So if you have any questions, if you have any favorite pieces of gear to pair with your camera, please leave that down in the comments as well. And if you liked this video, like it, actually press the like button and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.